I suppose so.
Around the corner that they're all so it's under
If the driver of the red car and the white car, I need you to possibly relocate your vehicle. The driver of the red car, burgundy Nissan, and the white car right there.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for coming out to the Micanopy Wakahuta Subcommittee. I apologize. Let's try it again. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. First, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Commissioner Williams, and I'm also the chair of the Micanopy Wakahuta Subcommittee. We would like to thank you. We would like to thank you all for coming out this morning to share in this occasion with us as we commemorate the lives lost at the hands of racial terrorism and injustice. Before I begin, there's a few people that I would like to recognize. Could the members of the Micanopy Wakahuta Subcommittee please raise their hand or stand? We have Ms. Melanie Barr, Ms. H. Grace Fuller, Mr. Bill Harlan, Bishop Christopher Stokes, and myself. Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the members of the Greater ACCRP, Dr. Deidre Houchin, Deputy Carl Smart. Am I missing anyone? I'm sorry if I've missed anyone. I can't see behind the tent. All of our elected officials that are present with us. We have the Mayor of Micanopy, Ms. Jenny Mance, Commissioner Ken Cornell. I also believe that I saw Ms. Tina Certain in attendance. We thank you all for your time. And Mr. Rodney Long. We thank you all for your attendance. Very briefly, I'd like to just touch on what we're gathered for today. Truth, according to the Webster's Dictionary, is defined as the body of real things, events, facts, and actuality. It is an unfortunate truth that during the post-Reconstruction era, we lost many lives at the hands of racial terrorism. Reconciliation is defined as the restoration of friendly relations. I'm not sure how many of you are aware or familiar, but on yesterday, Florida celebrated its Emancipation Day. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863. It wasn't until May 20th, 1865, that word reached Florida that slaves were indeed free. It was not until June 19th of the same year that word finally reached Texas, and now all of the southern states were aware. 2 years following that, we have the first documented lynching here in this in the Micanopy-Wakahuta subcommittee, the Micanopy-Wakahuta area. One of the things that I've come across in our efforts as we've begun to gather research and prepare for this ceremony, there's been a constant question of why do we have to revisit the past? I can best sum that up with a quote from Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Today, we take our efforts to recognize these individuals and to begin to take steps towards the right direction in being able to come together and unite. It is sad that we're still living in a time that we have to remind ourselves to say their names. George Floyd, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, just to name a few. As we gather here today, there are families in Buffalo, New York, preparing to lay their family members to rest because of an unfortunate situation where an individual walked into a predominantly black supermarket and targeted black individuals. While we have come a really long way, there's much more work to do. I am proud to be a part of this committee as it has awakened my own civic duties and encouraged me to be more active in my community so that I can begin to make a change just for myself, my children, and for those that are around me. So once again, we thank you, we welcome you. At this time, we'll have the New Beginnings Christian Worship Center praise team come before us with 2 selections.
Living, he loved me. Dying, he saved me. Buried, he carried my sins far away. Rising, he justified. Free me forever. One day, he's coming back. Glorious day. Living, he loved me. Dying, he saved me. Buried, he carried my sins far away. Rising, he justified. Free me forever. One day, he's coming back. Glorious. Living, he loved me.
Living, he loved me.
Yeah.
Dying, he saved me. Buried, he carried my sins far away. Rising, he
Free me
testified.
forever.
Free me forever.
One day.
One day he's coming back. One glorious day.
Living.
Living, he loved me.
Dying.
Dying, he saved me. Buried, he carried my sins far away. Rising, he testified. Free me forever. One day he's coming back. One glorious day.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
Oh, you can't tell it, let me tell it.
What he's done for me.
Yeah, you can't tell it, let me tell it.
What he's done for me.
Yeah, you can't tell it, let me tell it.
What he's done for me.
Oh, you can't tell it, let me tell it.
What he's done for me.
I get joy, 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 joy.
What he's done for me.
I get joy, 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 joy.
What he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
Oh, I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know what you come
Yeah, I didn't come to look at you.
I didn't come to look
Yeah,
at you.
I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know what you come
Yeah, I don't know you come to do.
I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know what you
You
come to
say,
do.
I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know what you come to do.
Yeah, I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know
A
what
little
you
bit louder. I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know what you come to do.
Yeah, I don't know what you come to do.
I don't know what
Yeah, I come to clap my hands.
my head.
I come to leap for joy. I come to stomp my feet.
My feet.
Let's put them together. Here we go. I come to clap my hands.
My head.
I come to leap for joy. I come to stomp my feet.
My feet.
I come to clap my hands.
My head.
I come to leap for joy. I come to stomp my feet.
My feet.
We're going to ask everybody to put your hands together like this.
You know down through the years, the Lord's been good to me. Oh, down through the years, you know the Lord's been good to me. Oh, down through the years, the Lord's been good to me. I said the Lord's been good to me. You know down through the years, the Lord's been good to me. Oh, down through the years, you know the Lord's been good to me. Oh, down through the years, the Lord's been good to me. You know the Lord's been good to me. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. While I'm on this teacher's journey, that I want Jesus to walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord.
Thank you. Thank you for those lovely selections. Next, we will have our background and significance by Deputy County Manager Carl Smart, followed by reflections from Bishop Christopher Stokes.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this morning in Micanopy. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I want to thank Commissioner Gianna Williams and the members of the Micanopy Subcommittee. Hey, all right. You can already tell they're doing a wonderful job. Dr. Deidre Houchin and Jackie Davis and many others serve along with Commissioner Williams and Wendy Lynn Bartell and Melanie Barr and all the others of the Micanopy Subcommittee. And we serve as representatives of the Alachua County Community Remembrance Project under the leadership of our Commissioner Charles Chuck Chestnut IV. As a background, the Community Remembrance Project focuses on researching and documenting the lynching of black people that occurred in this county during the post-Reconstruction era between 1877 and 1950. And it facilitates discussion on racial injustice in order to promote healing and reconciliation among all of our citizens here in Alachua County. The soil collection ceremony. This soil collection ceremony is part of an overall program of truth and reconciliation. The county is working a partnership with this community and with other communities around the county and with EJI, the Equal Justice Initiative of Montgomery, Alabama. EJI is a nonprofit organization founded by Brian Stevenson, an attorney who serves as its executive director. You may remember Brian Stevenson from the movie Just Mercy, or from his book, that was Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption. In April 2018, Mr. Stevenson and his team in Montgomery established the Legacy Museum and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice that commemorate the history of lynching that occurred throughout the South. EJI has confirmed through its research that more than 4,400 African Americans were lynched across 20 states during the post-Reconstruction period. These lynchings were extrajudicial, which means they were executions without the benefit of legal process. In addition to EJI and their research, we are fortunate to have local historians who contribute to this effort, including Dr. Paul Ortiz and the Samuel Proctor group out at the University of Florida, and Mrs. Karen Kirkman. And we continue to be inspired by the tremendous work of the late Dr. Patricia Hilliard Nunn, who was a catalyst in starting this program. Yes, she deserves our recognition. There are 8 subcommittees around the county, including Micanopy, and each can implement a combination of 3 programs that are created by EJI. One is the Historical Marker Program, the Soil Collection Program, and the Racial Justice Essay Contest. The Historical Marker Program involves placing an historical marker at a highly visible location in your community to commemorate the event and to educate the public. There's been 4 markers placed in the county thus far, one at Pleasant Plain United Methodist Church in Jonesville, another at Freddie Warmack Park in Newberry, one at the County Administration Building downtown, and another at the MLK Center in Gainesville. Second, the Soil Collection Program. It is collecting soil in clear jars from or near the site of the lynching. 2 jars per person, per victim. 1 jar that will be displayed in the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, and the other jar that will stay in the county in a designated place. Thus far, there have been 5 soil collection ceremonies around the county, and today's ceremony will make number 6. The third program is the Racial Justice Essay Contest. It provides a great opportunity for high school students to learn more about African American history by conducting research and writing essays to compete locally for scholarships. The students can write essays on historical or current events as well as personal experiences. EJI sponsors the contest and provides the scholarship funds for the winners. The contest is coordinated by the Alachua County School District. Thank you very much, School Board Member Certain. With assistance from the Library District, including the branch library here in Micanopy. There were 3 essay contests this year for students in several communities, primarily those attending Santa Fe High, Newberry High, and Hawthorne High School. And we are proud that one of your own, Tristan Kirkland, a student at Micanopy Academy, is one of this year's winners in the Racial Justice Essay Contest. Congratulations, Mr. Kirkland. So we thank you, Micanopy, for your participation in the Truth and Reconciliation program. Someone said a people who fail to learn from their history are doomed to repeat it. So we are learning and we are moving forward into a bright future. Now to talk about the significance and the importance of the county's program, we have with us today our commissioner, County Commissioner Ken Cornell, who will come and talk about significance and importance.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of our Chair Mary Helen Wheeler, on behalf of Anna Prizia, on behalf of our Commissioner Chuck Chestnut and myself, Ken Cornell. Melanie says I need to wear a name tag, so I'm Ken Cornell. I wanted to bring greetings on behalf of the County Commission and thank Micanopy for your participation in what the county has taken on with regards to Truth and Reconciliation. You know, a little bit over 3 years ago, after the Montgomery Legacy Museum opened, former Commissioner Chuck Chestnut, Hutch Hutchinson, Mike Byerly, and then Chuck Chestnut, Mary Helen Wheeler, and myself, we had a meeting. And we said, you know, we've got to go through the process of recognizing our role, Alachua County's role, the Alachua County government's role in Truth and Reconciliation. And so as Deputy Manager Smart talked about, you know, we have 3 current programs: the Historical Marker Program, what we're doing today, the Soil Collection Program, the Racial Justice Essay Program. But more than that, our county believes that we have to look at every program. And so in 2020, we asked the voters, what do you think? And in 2020, the voters passed a charter amendment that said, Alachua County, you must look at your systems and your processes every year. And we were very fortunate to be able to attract Dr. Houchin, who you will hear from shortly, to actually help us. We realize that it's not just what's happened in the past, but it's really what's happening today in every department. How is systemic racism, how is our own personal biases of our privilege and how we were raised affecting our policies? And how can we change those policies to recognize the injustices of the past, but more importantly, to make sure that we move forward in a way that includes everyone has a seat at the table, and that their voice is always heard. And so it is certainly my pleasure to be here and to participate in this event. I want to thank Micanopy for your leaning into this event as we work our way throughout the county, and we continue to do this not just today, but tomorrow. And so for that, thank you, Micanopy. And before I introduce Pastor Stokes, I also need to tell you that when I was elected in 2014, I think it was the second or third month after my election, Pastor Stokes showed up in my office and he prayed for me. And I thank you for that. And I will always remember that. And he didn't just do it then. I know he does it now, and I'm praying for him as well. And so I can't think of a better person to be here and representing Micanopy and really all of Alachua County than Pastor Stokes. So Pastor Stokes, thank you.
Because every time I see a crowd, automatically makes me think I'm in church. And so the first thing I'm going to do is, if you can, say amen. Now, if you could say it one more time. Now, this time, if you would say it like you mean it. We are excited to have you all here on today. This event could have been hosted anywhere in Micanopy, but for you all to come and to gather at the Willie Mae Stokes Community Center, it means the world to me. For us to be able to participate in this Truth and Reconciliation and a Remembrance Project, for me here in Micanopy, this is important to me. I was born and raised here in Micanopy. Grew up on this very same street when it was a dirt road. Worshipped in that church over there. And when I grew up here, there were a lot of things that I knew, but this is one thing that I never ever heard of. Some will say, why? Some said, why even do it? And we stand here today because it was a must that we do it. There were those that said, well, what are you, you're honoring criminals. And I say that they have never had the opportunity to be charged. And so we're here today to recognize justice denied. And the fact that you're here, the fact that you have assembled yourself here on a Saturday morning, gloomy skies, worrying about the possibility of rain, but yet you came, shows that this is important to you as well. Jacob Lee Wakahuta, 1867. Harry Simelton, Micanopy, 1867. Jim Jenkins, Wakahuta, 1870. Henry Henson, Micanopy, January the 12th, 1892. I just stood and said their names. What I'd like for you to do, for those that are sitting, if you could please stand. And now, I want you to say their names. Jacob Lee, Harry Simelton, Jim Jenkins, Henry Henson, Today, we remember and we say their names. You may be seated. And as I can conclude, we said their names of this committee. We kind of mentioned them in passing, but I want to recognize our subcommittee members. Commissioner Gianna Williams, will you please stand? We can, if you could just hold the applause for everyone, please. And I want us to, Dr. Wendy Lynn Bartels. She couldn't be with us this morning due to the passing of her father. And South Africa. She is currently in South Africa, laying her father to rest. Mr. Bill Harlan, Miss Melanie Barr, Miss Grace Fuller. Elder Larry Latson isn't here. Reverend Stanley Strobels. Mr. Anthony Peterson, Miss Virginia Peterson, Miss Debbie Anderson, and Gwen. These are the Wakahuta subcommittee members, and will you all do me a favor? Will you all give them a hand? Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Smart, Commissioner Cornell, and Bishop Stokes. Next, we will have a narrative on the Micanopy victims. But before we do that, I would just like to offer everyone an opportunity to have a moment of silence, to center yourselves, to ground yourselves in your heart. I know that this is indeed a heavy subject, and this is about true remembrance. So again, if we could all just take a moment to just bow our heads and have a moment of silence and reflection. If all hearts and minds are centered, next we will have a narrative on the Micanopy victims from Dr. Deidre Houchin, our Alachua County Equity and Community Outreach Manager, as well as Mr. Bill Harlan, the president of the Micanopy Historical Society.
Good morning, everyone. During the era of Reconstruction, white mobs lynched at least 3 black people in Micanopy and Wakahuta, Florida, including Harry Simonton in 1867, Jacob Lee in 1867, and Jim Jenkins in 1870. Due to the limited documentation about the racial terrorism that occurred during this era, little is known about the lives, the loves of these victims or the circumstances surrounding their lynchings. No surviving documentation indicates that any white person who participated in mob violence was convicted or held accountable for their deaths. Reconstruction was a 12-year period of legal, political, and social recreation that followed the Civil War's bitter end in 1865 and lasted until 1877. In 1865, after 2.5 centuries of brutal enslavement, Black Americans had great hope that emancipation would finally mean real freedom and opportunity. However, it became quickly clear that emancipation in the United States did not mean equality for Black people. The commitment to abolish chattel slavery was not accompanied by a commitment to equal rights or equal protection for African Americans. And the hope of Reconstruction quickly became a nightmare of unparalleled violence and oppression. Though existing records only reveal a portion of the violence enacted during the Reconstruction era, and untold numbers of victims have never been identified and may never be. The lynching of over 2,000 Black victims have been documented throughout the country during Reconstruction between 1865 and 1876. Following the Civil War in Alachua County, Florida, white plantation owners and other white people in the county enacted violence and exploitation against recently emancipated Black people in opposition to their freedom from chattel slavery. Many formerly escaped Black people who were forced to work as sharecroppers in this era were exploited by white landowners who manipulated Black farm laborers into cycles of debt and poverty. This exploitation was further reinforced through often violent retaliation if Black people attempted to challenge white landowners about their oppressive practices. A white woman who was interviewed about the racial oppression in Alachua County during this era recalled that white landowners in the community burned everything Black people had once they were emancipated, and that Black people were then forced to work half a day's labor just for a piece of bread to eat. Members in the same woman's family also participated in several lynchings of Black people with impunity. Despite this oppression during Reconstruction, Black people in Alachua County still went on to open their own businesses, to own farmlands. And they also comprised the majority of voters in this county. However, in an effort to maintain racial hierarchy, white people attacked Black people for asserting their rights, leaving plantations, participating in politics, working towards economic independence, or for the sheer racial terror that was random or arbitrary. In 1871, the United States Congress formed a joint committee to investigate the state of affairs in the former Confederate States in the years following the Civil War, which allowed for documentation of some of the widespread racial terror enacted upon Black communities in the South. Government officials provided testimony about Black people known to have been lynched by white mobs in Alachua County, including at least one victim in Micanopy, Harry Simonton in 1867, and two victims in Wakahuta, Jacob Lee in 1867 and Jim Jenkins in 1870. They also testified that the known names of the victims by no means reflected the full account of all Black people who were lynched in the county, and that there were countless acts of non-fatal attacks against black people as well. In addition to these 3 victims who were lynched in Micanopy and Wakahuta during the era of Reconstruction, at least 1 black person was killed by a white mob in Micanopy following Reconstruction, Henry Hinson, in 1892. In total, there are over 350 victims of racial terror lynching killed in the state of Florida between 1865 and 1950. These 4 victims are among dozens of documented victims killed in our home, Alachua County, during this same time period.
Good morning, and thank you all for coming. My focus is on Mr. Hinson in Micanopy. In the early morning hours of Tuesday, January 12th, 1892, a mob of approximately 100 armed white men abducted a black man named Henry Hinson from the jail in Micanopy and hanged him on a cedar tree at the south end of the town's public square. Mr. Hinson's body was left hanging on the tree for the entire day, with newspapers reporting that his lifeless corpse was still hanging on the tree at 6 p.m. that evening. No one was ever held accountable for the racial terror lynching of Henry Hinson. How did this happen? On the previous night of Monday, January 11th, 1892, a crowd of approximately 250 to 300 people gathered in the public square of Micanopy to attend a tightrope and trapeze performance. Imagine something like the circus coming to town, a smaller version of that. During this era, Jim Crow segregation reinforced the myth of racial hierarchy and pervaded all aspects of public life, including entertainment. As such, the venue for the performance was segregated, with black attendees restricted to one side of the public square and white attendees situated on the other side of the square. At some point during the performance, Mr. Hinson ventured over to the white section of the crowd, an action that was considered to be a social transgression due to the racial bigotry that permeated Southern society throughout this time period. Newspapers reported that a white man of prominence in the community approached Mr. Hinson and, quote, ordered him away because he had allegedly, quote, used insulting language in the presence of white ladies. This resulted in a confrontation in which Mr. Hinson was accused of fatally shooting the white man. Newspaper reports from the time described the aftermath of this first shooting as a race riot. Approximately 20 to 25 gunshots were fired amongst the crowd, resulting in the death of Mr. Hinson's friend, a black man named John Jones. Mr. Hinson fled from the venue, and the town marshal organized a group of armed men which, quote from the newspaper, scoured the country in every direction to find Mr. Hinson. In the early morning hours of Tuesday, January 12th, Mr. Hinson was found in a home approximately 5 miles outside Micanopy. Brought back into town and detained in jail. In complete regard for Mr. Hinson's right to due process of the law, an armed mob of approximately 100 white men abducted him from the jail, the Micanopy jail, around 2 a.m., 2 in the morning. Although at least one newspaper reported that Mr. Hinson had a strong guard around him, while in custody, law enforcement rarely use force against white mobs intent on lynching black people. The white mob dragged Mr. Henson to the public square where the shootings had taken place, tied a rope around his neck, and hung him to death on a cedar tree. Following the lynching, Mr. Henson's lifeless body was left hanging throughout the entire morning and afternoon and into the evening. As I said, newspapers reported on the lynching at 6 p.m. Tuesday evening indicated that Mr. Henson's corpse was still hanging at that time, and that, quote, nobody apparently cared to cut it down and give him a decent burial. Racial terror lynchings were meant to instill fear in entire black communities, and white community members and public officials often left the bodies of lynched black men, women, and children on display to inflict further trauma on the black community and to send a message of racial hierarchy. Sources do not suggest that any investigation of the lynching was pursued, although there is no indication that the identities of any mob participants were concealed. No one was ever held accountable for lynching Mr. Henson. That concludes our historical narrative. Next on the program to give the family tribute is Representative Yvonne Hayes Henson.
Dang. So when I was invited here and asked to invite my son and my ex-husband, totally off script, I didn't know the historical account of Henry Henson. I can tell you the stories my ex-husband told me. He probably didn't know the whole story. Let me try to get back to what I plan to do. So I am Yvonne Hayes Henson, and I am the state representative for District 20, your representative. Clearly, we are on sacred ground today. Historical ground. Heartbreaking ground. It was somewhere near here many years ago that our brothers and our sisters were lynched. They were lynched because of the color of their skin and the hatred in the hearts of their oppressors. It was a traumatic era in America's history. Martin Luther King said, "But I've decided to stick with love because hate is too heavy a burden to bear." The Equal Justice Initiative, of which I've actually visited their headquarters and found many different relics related to Henry Henson, they're committed to memorializing and eradicating mass killings and injustice, and we are honored by their commitment to this legacy, which includes mass incarceration. We honor the lives and memories of the victims here in Micanopy and Wakahuta. The soil of a lynching site is a physical connection to the lives lost there, to the events and people who never received justice and deserve to be remembered. And the Equal Justice Initiative believes that the blood that fell to the soil is indeed in the soil, and we can use that to honor their memory. There were at least 21 people lynched in Alachua County, a chilling reminder of our area's ugly, violent, and hateful past and present. The soil collected here today should serve as a reminder of the atrocities of the past and present in hopes of a better future. It will be displayed here and at the Equal Justice headquarters in Montgomery. I know I got to hurry up because I feel raindrops. It is paramount that we remember the importance of holding a space for truth and reconciliation. The history of black folks in America must be remembered, and the devastation must be acknowledged in order to move forward. When I had my son, and my ex-husband insisted his name be Henry, we're talking about in the 80s. I mean, in the, what was his name? Yeah, in the 80s, somewhere back there. I say, Henry? I don't want my son to be named no old fogey name like Henry. Why are you insisting on naming our son Henry? And he told me the story of his grandfather. I knew he had a uncle named Henry. I thought maybe we were naming him after Uncle Henry, who we call Man Boy. But Henry was named after his father, Henry, of whom we speak. Mm-hmm. The story they told me is that Henry was a landowner and he was a mean motor scooter. And white folks kept coming on his land against his will. And he got a shotgun one night and told them to get off his land and shot at him. Now, that was the story I got, and they abducted him in the middle of the night. Maybe that's how he got to Micanopy. But it sounds like there are some gaps in that story. We're all cognizant of the fact that racism still exists. We all understand that true equality has not been realized. We were reminded of this not too long ago as the new commissioner reminded us of the modern day lynching that just occurred in Buffalo. Took the lives of 10 people for no apparent reason. Racism exists, hatred exists, it existed then, it exists now. The memories of the souls taken from this earth live on in our memory. This soul ensures that they will never be forgotten, that this soul makes them have a voice. My hope is that the memory of these people inspires change. And today we want to start with that change. Today, we are facing banned books and prohibited public school teachers from teaching our nation's history if it makes some people uncomfortable. Well, aren't we uncomfortable today with these stories? I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable hearing about my son's grandfather. That was an uncomfortable story, but it was a necessary story. Banning a woman's right to make decisions about her own reproductive health. Banning gay people from having a voice. Suppressing our right to vote. They're doing all kinds of things to keep black people from voting. So today, we have the Democratic Women's Club here registering people to vote. We have Faith in Florida. This is a religious group who believes in putting their faith in action. They're here registering people to vote as well. The NAACP is here signing up people all over Micanopy if they want to come for the NAACP. You can also sign up to join the Democratic Women's Club. They are getting people to vote. You're going to want, and men and women can join the Democratic Women's Club, men. We got men in the Democratic Women's Club too, just so you know. And on the one table that I have here, I have vote by mail applications for Alachua County. I have vote by mail applications for Marion County because Micanopy has both counties. I also have on my table some fans. I see people fanning with them. I also have on my table a little card because black elected officials are tired of being pushed back. They just did a congressional map that will eliminate 2 black seats from the congressional map. We had over 10 seats set aside for black people, and now there's only 2. We got to fight back, people, and we need you to pledge to vote. There's a card on my table that tells you where to text a number that says stay woke. Even though they got a ban in the woke, it says stay woke. If anybody can get it and pass it out, I hope you will get that card. Text the number that says stay woke and then put in the text stay woke, and it will give you a place to pledge to vote. And then share that number with other people in the community so we can get people to pledge to vote. And then when you pledge, you got to make a plan to vote, because it's not always easy for people who work. Even though we have early voting, we have vote by mail, and we have a precinct right here in Micanopy, it still causes some problems. Not only that, who picks a fight with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck? Who would pick a fight with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck? We need to take back our state, ladies and gentlemen, and there's no way to do that unless we vote. Now, my hope again is the memory that these people inspire change, but they have already given the best of their service. That they are a reminder to you to be vigilant in the defense of the oppressed and the outcast. We can achieve equality and freedom. I believe that. I have to. We must work for it. We must hope for it. We have to believe in it. And we have to fight for it. It doesn't come easy. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, never will. Change takes a long time, but we've got to demand it. And I thank all of you for your presence here today. I'm filled with all kinds of discomfort. Let me just say, I'm coming off now. I invited both my ex-husband, imagine that. I invited my ex-husband and my son. I told him I would pay for his airfare ticket. I wanted you to meet my Henry Henson. Neither one of them are comfortable enough to hear this story. And now that I've heard it, I thank God he wasn't here to hear it. Because that is a terrible, terrible crime that was committed on his grandfather. And I don't know if he had the instincts to know this was not where he needed to be, but that is not a story I actually want him to hear. Not in public, not ever. I think I'm done with that. I'm glad I fought this fight for him. I've traveled. The first time I heard about Patricia Hilliard Nunn's research was in the newspaper. I had just moved back home. I was actually sleeping in my sister's den trying to make the people finish building my house. And I saw the story. Patricia Hilliard Nunn had done some research on lynchings, and true enough, of all the people she listed in the paper was Henry Henson. Well, of course, that stirred me up, and I got busy trying to figure out more about Henry Henson. I traveled to Montgomery with the Unitarian Church, and that's where I saw so much evidence that had been revealed about Henry Henson. I took pictures, I shared it with my son, I begged him to share it with his father, and it is me that has been on this journey to find out more about the Henry Henson of whom my son is named. His name is Henry Ivan Henson. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Hayes Henson. She touched on something that I think is important to say and to remind. This project is not about pointing the finger and saying, hey, somebody connected to you did this thing. This is about having an uncomfortable conversation. It should be uncomfortable. We should never be okay with the stories that we've heard today. We should not be okay with Buffalo. We should not be okay with continuously having to say their name. We should not be okay with our children being stripped of opportunities to learn more about themselves. But we should be encouraged to pick up the mantle and continue to provide these types of opportunities and so much more so that we can pass these down, so that we can know how to move forward, and that we know where we come from and why we should walk with our heads up in a sense of pride. As someone who was born and raised in Micanopy myself, as a descendant of Willie Mae Stokes, I'm proud to stand before you knowing my history and knowing where that's carrying me now. I feel that our ancestors are looking down on this program and everyone that is in attendance with appreciation and honor because we're going about it the right way. Next, I would like to invite our essay winner, Tristan Kirkland, as well as my new friend, Albert, to come to the stage, if they don't mind. They are both, and Miss Kirkland as well. Okay, all right. They are both students at Micanopy Academy. Alfred, I'm so sorry. I called you my friend and said the wrong name. We had such an in-depth conversation yesterday. I'm sorry. I had an opportunity to meet with Miss Suggs. Miss Suggs, are you here? Okay, so in her absence, I want to say thank you to the Micanopy Academy, Ms. Tarlo Phillips, the principal, as well as Kristen Walker, who serves as the assistant principal, and Ms. Serena Suggs, who is the art teacher. We've been in correspondence with them concerning the essay contest and also wanting to find a way to bring in our middle school students. As they stated, the essay contest was centered more towards the 9th and 12th grade. Because Micanopy is a smaller area and a lot of our students do attend public schools in the larger Alachua County area, we wanted to make sure that we provided an opportunity for conversation and expression. A lot of times as adults, we get caught up in what we see on the news and we don't always take the chance and the opportunity to talk to our youth, to see how they're processing it, to see how they're combating these issues on a day-to-day when they're in school. I encourage you as you leave today that you talk to a niece, a nephew, daughter, son, grandchild, anyone. Take these conversations, take the mementos that are at the sign-in table and have a brief moment to just discuss it with them. It's so much that you could learn from children. I told them I'd much rather have a conversation with middle and high school students before I hold a lot of conversations with adults. Again, could I have Mr. Tristan Kirkland and Mr. Alfred that come up front? All right. Hey, buddy. Thank you, sir.
I did my essay on racism and pop culture, and yeah, that's about it. But racism has plagued our country and the entire world for ages, so it's no surprise that it can be traced in pop culture for back decades. Which isn't really surprising considering African Americans couldn't actually even vote without an extreme amount of limitations until 1965. One of the most well-known racism depictions was in D.W. Griffin's film The Birth of a Nation, which disgustingly portrayed a Ku Klux Klansmen as saviors uniting the nation by killing those of color. Many of those older examples of racism in entertainment also include the act of blackface, which depicts a white person in heavy black face paint with red lipstick drawn to make it look like the person has very large lips. This act would also have the person acting like a savage, which was the stereotype of those of color made by white people. As of more recently, these depictions of racial issues have obviously varied. Although there is a lot of actual racism in film and media, there is also a lot to combat racism and point out the flaws of certain parts of society. A very influential movie that highlights this topic is the book/2018 film The Hate U Give, which discusses the stereotype that African American males are assumed to be gang-related because of gun violence statistics. Another topic of the book is prejudice from a society that life can be disregarded and covered up by those in higher power just because they can play the person's death out to meet their agenda. Furthermore, another movie that points out racism and prejudice is the film Get Out, directed by Jordan Peele. The focus of this film is slavery, specifically in the South, and how those kinds of beliefs still exist in present day. Additionally, this film also features stereotypes of African Americans, one of them being that they're faster than white people. This leads up to the point in the movie in which most of the messages about slavery start to appear as the main character is trying to survive the family attempting to steal his body because of their beliefs. Fun fact is that the movie was filmed in Mobile, Alabama. Additionally, moving aside from movies, another huge component in pop culture that I've yet to talk about is music. The obvious thing to talk about would just be racist music, but alternatively, the more constructive thing would be to talk about the recognition of rap/R&B, two types of music predominantly dominated by African Americans, in the media, specifically award shows. One of the most famous examples of this is how African American music was placed under the category urban up until last year. The Grammys faced major backlash after this, so they were obviously forced to change it. Many artists had been nominated/received awards for this category, such as Drake and Ariana Grande. The main criticizer of this term was the hip-hop artist Tyler, the Creator, stating that the term was essentially a more politically correct way of saying the N-word. Subsequently, the way most of this has been influencing our community is best shown by the University of Florida's Racial Equity Initiative. A study in 2018 was conducted that displayed that African American communities the African Americans that lived in communities in the east side of Gainesville faced the most disparities. These disparities are not limited to, but include educational attainment, health and wellness, negative contact with law enforcement, poverty, income, and employment. One of the biggest disparities is the poverty rate of African Americans. In 2015, the average yearly income of an African American living in Alachua County was only $26.6 thousand. Their plan with the initiative is to quote, our solution aims to overcome these obstacles by bridging institutional silos within organizations and forcing long-term partnerships across stakeholders of the biggest boundaries to leverage resources toward a common and sustained and unified objective that is guided by and led by the community, resulting in sustainable impact through collaboration, community engagement, and community capacity building. The plan is set to be a 10-year transformation plan attempting to link the community's anchor institutions. In conclusion, racism has plagued our society for centuries, and thus it has always been a negative part of pop culture, but thus it is still included in it. However, as of more recently, because of many influential figures and celebrities, there are more efforts to combat it in communities, which are rallying together to fight systematic racism. And a more local example of this is in our own county with UF's Racial Equity Plan, which is set to link all of our communities together.
Very well done, Tristan. Thank you. Thank you, Tristan, for that very, very well written essay. Again, as you can see, our youth have a lot to say. They have a major perspective. They are very in tune with what is being produced in front of their eyes and how that affects them. Standing with me, I have Alfred. I tried to convince my new friend to speak, but we're going to get to that the next time. He's a new up-and-coming artist. Yeah, thank you. All right. You want to hold? No, hold it right. I'm going to describe your art, sir. Somebody might want to buy this. All right. So when we approached the middle school, sometimes I can think really small. And I'd initially asked Ms. Suggs to have the children do a collage, a picture collage centered around racial injustice and how they choose to combat it, the things that they face. However, she came up with the idea of the trees. As you'll see, all of the trees are in black. What we're here for today is a somber, unfortunate event. But the 3 students that we have on display also use colors to show that there's beauty in that moment. As explained to me yesterday by my new friend, and I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm wrong, he wanted to use colors and gradients to show that even though we all may have a difference of opinions, we have one common goal, and that is to be good humans, to love one another, and to live accordingly. I myself was touched by that because, again, it is a repurposing of trees. It is taking something that was used in a negative way and showing that there's still beauty that can come from this moment, that we can still work together. And he gave me hope just in knowing that this was the way that he chose to encounter this situation. And I appreciate you, sir, for coming out and being with us. You as well, Tristan. Please, please, please continue to encourage our youth to be active, to use their voice, and to speak up. We are indeed in the midst of change. It's a transition. 5 years ago, I did not see myself in the position that I'm in now, but it was because I had people in my life that continuously pushed me to go forward and to be a better version of myself that I've been able to do so. And it is my hope that you all carry today with you as an inspiration to continue to be shining stars and activists, not only in our community, but in your schools, your families, and anywhere that you go. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of our committee for your participation, and parents as well. Thank you so much. All right, so we are nearing the end of our program. Next, we will have a poem by our retired anthropologist and social justice, Miss H. Grace Fuller, followed by prayer from Reverend Stanley Strobels.
Thank you. I'm short, so I'm not going to stand behind that stand, or you wouldn't be able to see me at all. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons, like suns, and the certainty of tides, like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I got golden diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I am the dream and the hope of slave. I rise. I rise. I rise.
We're gathered today as a great cloud of witnesses. Let us pray. God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. Lord, we thank you for this program. We thank you for everyone gathered here today in spite of the weather. Lord, we especially give thanks to the committee who worked so hard to make this possible. We pray that your love, mercy, and grace will be with us all forevermore. If I might say, when I was a child, I was walking at downtown Micanopy. You know, you come in from either the south side or the north side. And I was coming in from the south side. And my dad was holding my little hand. I was about 10 years old. We was coming to Micanopy to get some ice cream. And he said, there was a lynching in Micanopy. And I was shocked as a young man to hear, in our little peaceful town. And I looked at the big oak trees over there, and I looked to the left to see which one, but he never mentioned where or what tree. And that was that. And we're not gathered here to rewrite history, but that we may not make the same mistakes in the future, but that we all may be a better people to do what God would have us to do. Lord, we just pray that your goodness, your mercy, and your grace always be with us. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Reverend Strobels, also a former mayor of Micanopy, former commissioner. Thank you for your service. All right, so here we are at the soil selection collection as well as the lighting of the candles. I would like to ask Representative Yvonne Henson to light a candle. Also, can we have a member from the Wakahuta subcommittee? Mr. Tristan Kirkland, would you mind lighting a candle for us, please, sir? My new friend, Alfred, would you mind lighting a candle for us, please, sir? Thank you. The candles that are being lit are on behalf of each of the 4 victims. As you can see, we like to use Representative Hayes Henson as she is tied to Mr. Henson in remembrance and honor of his loss and her family. Tristan and Alfred, we thank you again for your participation, as well as the Wakahuta subcommittee. Thank you. Next, we will be preparing to place the soil into the jars for each victim. Just a brief background on the soil, and actually before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge our County Commission Chair, Ms. Mary Helen Wheeler, for your attendance. Thank you so much. In his absence, on behalf of our subcommittee, I would like to give a special thank you to our former mayor, Joe Offmuth. But let me explain why he is deserving of that clap and so much more. As a subcommittee, the larger ACCRP as well as the Micanopy subcommittee, there was a lot of research and time and effort that was placed into documenting these lynchings and towards getting us here today. From the conception, Mayor Offmuth was the only of 5 to support us. He did not question our motives. He did not doubt us. He did not stonewall us. He gave us unwavering support. And for that, we are thankful. And if you're watching Mayor Offmuth, again, just thank you so much for your efforts. Because of some of the complications that we faced, and all complications aren't always bad. Goodness comes from it. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to have unnecessary conversations that you don't always understand. But it was in doing that and meeting with Dr. Houchin that we were inspired to collect soil from the Haynes Memorial Cemetery. If I could be candid with you all, there's two cemeteries here in Micanopy. You have the Historical Cemetery, which is not far from here, and then you have Haynes Memorial, which is a little down on 441, way back on a dirt road, way back around the corner. And historically speaking, that is the Black Cemetery. We collected soil from the cemetery in honor of our victims, those who have gone unnamed, and those who will continue to go unnamed. So as our committee and members of the community come before you, please be mindful that the soil that you are collecting and placing into this jar is just not dirt. It is not something we step on. This is from sacred ground. This is in honor of individuals who did not have a chance to live their life to the best of their ability and their fulfillment. We invite anyone that wants to participate in this. We'll form a line as we come down to put the soil in. There's a bucket in front of each jar and a scooper, and you'll just take a scoop of the soil and place it into the jar. As we're doing this, we have our local artist and flautist. Did I say it right? Sure. All right, awesome. Mr. Kelly Sean Baynard. Up the grave. That's all right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't think I need a mic. Thank you all for coming out, and blessings to the souls of people that were killed unjustly. You can certainly feel the energy sometimes still in this town, and so I hope for healing, to remember all God's children, not only humans but all living things. But certainly there's a lot more healing to do for equality. So my prayer is that it could moves forward. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I'm Deborah. Oh, and Sean.
80? Katie, okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
And while we are still filling up the jars, I just want to take a moment to let you know that please don't leave. We have food that is under the pavilion, and it is free. And we want you all to please, please, please partake of the delicious food and drinks. And so please go underneath the pavilion and dine with us. And as we're doing this, if we could just take a moment, we've talked about remembering those that are in Buffalo. On today, there are services that are being held for the victims, and if we could remember them in our thoughts and in our prayers. Please sign in if you didn't sign in. And please take all of the stuff that's on the table.